Hey, it's your local fish keeper, Sabrina. Well, maybe not a fish keeper for today, because today's video is all about an aquatic amphibian, specifically an axolotl. I believe the correct pronunciation for an axolotl in the Nahuatl language is axolotl, but for the sake of today's video, I am just going to pronounce it as axolotl because I'm so used to it. In Japan, they call axolotls whooper loopers or upa rupa, which I find very fun to say. Before we start today's video, a quick disclaimer. This is not an axolotl care guide video. I've only had Aurora, my adopted axolotl, for 3 months now. Well, nevertheless, I will be talking about my journey of becoming a first-time axolotl keeper thus far. I've always been interested in axolotls but had never imagined of ever owning one. Besides reading and researching about puffers, I do read and watch videos on axolotls for fun. From their regenerative abilities and their high resistance to cancer, their rich history to their absolutely adorable grins, what's not to love about axolotls? Back in May, a friend notified me about a local fish store that had some axolotls in stock. This particular store was also the only one that I've seen thus far that do keep their axolotls chilled with a chiller, which makes me want to support them oh so much more. However, during that time, Malaysia was under nationwide lockdown and only a number of pet stores in an area were allowed to operate. Unfortunately, they were not one of them. They did mention that they were waiting for approval and permission to operate, but that took quite a while. So in the meantime, I went ahead and joined a few axolotl groups on Facebook and other social media platforms and engaged myself with the axolotl community to learn more about other people's experiences. One thing that you will always hear me say is to do your own research prior to getting any kinds of pet, and engaging yourself with the community is a tremendous help. Nevertheless, do take everything you hear with a grain of salt and cross-check references. Asking admins and moderators from an active, up-to-date axolotl group is definitely helpful. One fateful night, while I was looking around in one of these groups, I came across an ad of someone rehoming their axolotl. Now, I know this might sound bad, but I was determined to not adopt a rehomed or rescued axolotl. Of course, without a doubt, rescues are great and very rewarding, but they do still require a lot of your time, effort, and patience. At the time, I had just finished treating some puffers and I wanted a break. However, from the title of this video, that clearly did not happen. Something about Aurora's photo caught my attention, and deep down in my gut feelings, I knew Aurora was mine. Dramatic, I know. Before I adopt any rehomed or rescue animals, I would always ask a few questions to the owners to better understand their animals' living conditions. Questions I would ask include their overall general health, their diet and appetite, their tank condition, and is the tank cycled prior to getting their pet. Aurora was indeed a family pet belonging to 2 children, and safe to say she is a Minecraft axolotl. So what do I mean by a Minecraft axolotl? With the recent Minecraft update, which includes axolotls a few months back, people have been raging over how cute and adorable these little predators are. It was so popular that there were a huge influx of new axolotl keepers. Everyone wanted one in real life. Axolotls became the new, quote-unquote in thing exotic pet to have in the pet keeping world. Well, animals should never become an in thing to begin with. While this has introduced more people to the world of axolotls, unfortunately for some, the lack of research done prior to owning axolotls have caused a lot of sick and dead axolotls. It's bad enough that axolotls are critically endangered in the wild. It is just very sad to see such things happen in the hobby as well. For this matter, I cannot stress enough of how important it is to do your own personal research. Back to Aurora. While I believe Aurora's previous family have their best intentions to care for Aurora, the lack of research has led to Aurora's multiple health issues. A quick rundown of Aurora's previous home conditions: she was kept in an appropriate size tank, but unfortunately her tank was not cycled. She has only one aquarium fan to cool her tank down, and living in a tropical country does not do it any justice. Aurora was fed a diet of freeze-dried shrimps and frozen bloodworms. Having heard all of this information, I knew I was anticipating a sick axolotl. There's a saying in the Malay language that goes, "Alang-alang menyeluk pekasam, biar sampai ke pangkalengan," which means go all out while you're at it. So I guess I'm speedrunning Axolotl Healthcare, and boy was I in for a treat. Disclaimer: I am not a trained professional. Please seek professional help if your axolotl is very sick. Being a first-time axolotl keeper, I do lack the observance for signs of a sick axolotl. However, ammonia burns due to an uncycled tank is pretty universal. When Aurora first arrived to my house, the girl was red in color. After acclimating her, I placed her in a cycle-chilled quarantine tank. I began giving her daily 30-minute baths of Indian almond leaves extract, and soon enough her redness started to subside, and she looked okay. Or so I thought. On day 4, I noticed that one of her gill stalks had shrunk, and honestly at the time I did not think any of it. It was until the next day when I noticed white cottony fluffy tufts on her gills. Fungus appears as white fluffy cottony tufts and is common among axolotls because it simply likes cool temperatures. Fungus can be caused by improper water parameters, an injury, or even stress. One thing I can say is that fungus waits for nobody. It is very aggressive and acts fast, so immediate attention is needed. To treat fungus, at first, I gave Aurora a 15-minute bath of Indian almond leaves extract daily with daily 100% water changes. However, Aurora's fungus went from her gills to spreading along her body, specifically the ammonia burn sites. At this point, her gills had undergone tissue necrosis and she had secondary bacterial infection. Her appetite was also noticeably poor. As Aurora's fungus developed to become more severe, I had to seek for other options. Axolotls are very sensitive creatures and do not tolerate well with most aquarium products, including medicine and chemicals, so special care to attention is needed when treating one. While a lot of sites have mentioned salt baths, they can be quite harsh and stressful for axolotls. So, I opted for methylene blue baths instead. Methylene blue in appropriate dosage can be very helpful in treating fungus. For Aurora, I then included a 15 minutes methylene blue bath daily to her treatment regime. I don't recommend dosing methylene blue directly into your tank as it does disrupt your beneficial bacteria, thus your cycle. The treatment was then repeated for the next 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, Aurora looked so much better. However, she still had some exposed injured sites due to the ammonia burns. But I was very happy and thrilled to see her gills progress as the fungus seems to have disappeared. Aurora was then moved to her main cycle-chilled tank. However, that was not the end of things. While the treatment regime has helped Aurora with fungus, it did not do much for her bacterial infection. Her gills began to shrink and she started looking ill again. Her appetite was still poor and she was floating for most of the time. At this point, I knew I had to seek for professional help. I contacted a friend of mine who is a vet and at the same time asked experienced axolotl keepers on what I can do to help Aurora. Everyone agreed that it was indeed a bacterial infection that was also affecting her slime coat. On top of that, Aurora was actually impacted due to her previous diet, but I will talk more about this later on in the video. Now, I only recommend the usage of antibiotics when it is absolutely necessary. It is not to be used as a prophylactic treatment. Since everything was still under lockdown, I was left with no choice but to treat Aurora myself with the guidance of others. The two antibiotics I was instructed to get are kanamycin and metronidazole. CCAM makes them and they're marketed as Candaplex and Metroplex respectively. I dosed the medicine accordingly to the instructions on the bottle. After 3 rounds of these antibiotics, I was then instructed to switch kanamycin with nitrofurazone. Another 2 weeks went by and slowly but surely, Aurora was looking much better. While it is completely normal for axolotls to float sometimes, it is not normal if they do it all the time. Aurora was floating with a poor appetite. She did not even poop as frequent as how axolotls do and at one point stopped completely. So it was quite apparent that she was constipated or even impacted due to her previous diet of freeze-dried shrimps. Axolotls should not be fed anything with a hard exoskeleton. For example, superworms, mealworms, crickets, and freeze-dried shrimps, as they simply cannot digest them. To combat this, I performed 100% daily water changes while she was in her quarantine tank and 50% daily water changes while she was in her main tank. Besides that, the Indian almond leaves extract bath that she was given during the course of treatment has helped her with her constipation as well. The one thing that has definitely helped her though is frozen thawed salmon chunks. Salmon, as we know, are quite oily in nature. This actually helps in lubricating her gastrointestinal tract to help things move along. It took quite some time for her to do the deed, but these 3 treatment combinations have definitely helped her out. If your axolotl has a more severe form of constipation or impaction, please do seek for professional help. Fridging is only to be done in life and death situations while waiting to seek for professional help. Aurora's main diet consists of gut-loaded African night crawlers. She would usually take the worm whole, but if she spits it back out and I do see her struggling with it, I would cut up the worms and dab it with tissue paper to get rid of the quote-unquote juices. I do tongue feed Aurora. You can leave the food in the tank and let them hunt, but for Aurora, I prefer to tongue feed her in order to keep her tank in pristine condition, especially since she's still in recovery. In the past, I have fed her red wrigglers, but she tends to spit it out more. Apparently, red wrigglers taste quite bitter for them. Aurora used to like the Hikari carnivore sinking pellets until I introduced frozen thawed salmon chunks to her during her treatment period. At one point, she even refused her worms because she loves salmon so much. I had to fast and train her to take African night crawlers again. While frozen thawed salmon is great for constipation, it shouldn't be their main diet. Salmon is quite fatty and do not contain the necessary nutritional content that axolotls require. However, I still feed Aurora frozen thawed salmon chunks as treats. However, salmon pellets are different as they've been fortified with the necessary vitamins and nutritional requirements. Unfortunately, axolotl pellets or salmon pellets specifically are really hard to come by from where I'm from. If I could find soft salmon pellets, I would include them together with the African night crawlers as part of Aurora's main diet. Oh, and one more thing, please don't feed your axolotls hot dogs. That's just messed up. I'm keeping Aurora's tank setup pretty simple for now as she's still in recovery and to make it easier on myself to monitor her. Aurora is 6 inches in size and she is currently in a 20-gallon or a 76-liter tank. Honestly speaking though, I am thinking of moving her to a bigger tank once her condition has become more stable and when she's grown a little bit more in size. Aurora has no lights for her tank as axolotls do not have eyelids. Harsh lighting, especially bright ones, do stress them out. The lights I have on here currently are for filming purposes only. She does, however, get indirect sunlight and the room lights because I still feel that it is important to help regulate her circadian rhythm. As for substrate, I went ahead with sand. Sand is only to be used for axolotls that are 5 inches and above in size. For younger, smaller axolotls, sand can cause impaction. Small-sized gravels, small pebbles, and small decorations are really bad to have in an axolotl tank as when ingested, will cause impaction that needs immediate professional intervention. I know a lot of axolotl keepers like to keep a bare-bottom tank for their axolotls as it is easier to clean and is hassle-free, which I agree with very much so. However, with Aurora, having her in a bare-bottom tank can be quite stressful for her. She finds it hard to grip herself as it is slippery. Aurora likes to dig, aka scavenge for food, so I let her have her sand. As for filtration, I am using a canister filter that is hooked up to a chiller. Let's talk filtration first. I am using a spray bar attachment which I face towards the wall of the tank to minimize the current or flow in the tank. In the wild, axolotls live in calm, cold waters, and a strong current or flow really stress axolotls out. To add extra agitation to the surface of the water for better oxygenation, I've placed an airstone disc inside her tank. Aurora loves to play in the bubbles. If your axolotl is stretching their gills like a cat or is always placing themselves on the bubbles, please check for signs of fungus. Now let's talk about temperature control. This is one of the most important subjects when it comes to keeping axolotls. Unfortunately, during your deep dive into axolotl research, you will come across a few people who will say to you that it is completely okay to keep your axolotls at tropical room temperature as, quote-unquote, they were bred here. I'm sorry to say, but it simply does not work that way. Axolotls are cold water animals no matter where they're bred or come from. And I think that Aurora was kept at around 26 degrees Celsius to 28 degrees Celsius or 79 degrees Fahrenheit to 82.4 degrees Fahrenheit temperature range in her previous home is a living proof as to why axolotls need cold temperatures. Coming from someone currently living in a tropical country, trust me, a chiller is necessary. The ideal temperature range for axolotls is 16 degrees Celsius to 18 degrees Celsius or 60 degrees Fahrenheit to 64 degrees Fahrenheit, with 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit being the highest temperature before your axolotl's gills starts to shrink and develop all sorts of health issues. Ice bottles are a short-term solution as they do melt pretty quickly and you will need to constantly switch them out. Aquarium fans, at the very most, will only cool down your tank by 4 degrees Celsius or 39.2 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not enough, and water evaporation will be crazy. Air conditioners sometimes do work, but you will need to switch it on for 24/7, which is a big oof. So, if you live in a tropical or warm country, a chiller is absolutely necessary. As for chiller size, whatever your tank size is, definitely get a chiller that is one size up than the volume of your aquarium. I keep Aurora's tank in the 16 to 18 degrees Celsius temperature range. Thermometers are definitely something you will need in an axolotl tank. I have 2 on Aurora's tank so I can determine the average temperature and to make sure it always stays in the temperature range. I don't recommend getting the stick-on thermometer as most do not measure below 18 degrees Celsius or 64 degrees Fahrenheit. A digital thermometer that has a little alarm when it gets too warm is a great one to have. I got Aurora a hammock for her tank recently and she seems to really like it. She loves to chill on top of it and it's also a higher begging ground whenever she wants to catch my attention. This is Repti Hammock by Zoomed. If you like one, get one with the suction cups instead of the steel rings. As for caves, I do have these 2 beautiful caves made by Kenzie from White Citrus Ceramics on Etsy. The small one is actually a better cave, but Aurora liked it so much that I left it in her tank. Can we take a moment to appreciate this axolotl cave though? It's so cute and I adore it so much. Aurora loves sleeping in it. Her caves are all smoothened out, so Aurora can't get hurt from them. I swear these caves are not sponsored. I truly love Kenzie's works, so check her out on Etsy. I would love to add more caves and hideouts for Aurora in the future, but these are good for now. Besides that, Aurora has these 2 moss balls in her tank which she likes to push around. However, please get your moss balls from a trusted and reliable source to avoid the whole zebra mussel issue. Last but not least, Aurora has a lid on top of her tank. These are actually tank dividers, but they work. Axolotls do get zoomies sometimes, and they can definitely jump out of their tank. They are fully aquatic creatures and cannot survive on land, so a lid is definitely important. So far, Aurora's recovery is going well. The red marks on her body are gone and her gills have started to regenerate. Regeneration period depends on the axolotl itself. Younger axolotls heal up faster compared to older ones. I was told that Aurora's gills may not look as how her original gills do lengthwise, but as long as Aurora's healthy, I'm happy. Since Aurora is still in recovery, I am still doing water changes and giving her Indian almond leaves extract baths every 2 days. Her appetite has definitely improved. I believe I've rambled on long enough. As I'm still a first-time axolotl keeper, please feel free to give me advice and correct me if whatever I'm doing for Aurora is wrong or can be improved. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content, and please do comment down below as I love hearing your thoughts and reading your comments. Until then, see you next time!